Welcome to the Fan Zone. We have another guest joining myself, Jenny Rudall and Bobby Hayler, and we are live on social media. So, Bobby, no swearing today, okay? Keep you under wraps. And my next guest is from the Hawtins Stud, no stranger to success here at the LeMieux National Championships. Judith Davis, thank you so much for joining us. Talk about your enterprise, about British breeding. I'm hoping maybe an insight into what stallions you think are looking good for 2022. And also the success that the Hawtins Stud has had over the years. It's so nice of you to join us. Thank you for coming on stage. I know these things can be quite daunting. First off, I have so many questions. It's where do we start? But tell us a little bit about the Hawtins Stud. For a lot of people, those horses like Hawtins Delicato are horses that straight away jump to mind when you think about that. For people who maybe are new to dressage or only follow it at the Olympic level and to the World Championship stages. But tell us a little bit about the stud.
Well, yes, thank you for inviting me today. Yes, well, the stud, we started in 2000. We started with 6 foundation mares, and we chose the Hanoverian breed because the quality of the breed in terms of their, you know, the gaits, the paces, their success in competition, but also because of their trainability and their rideability, which is, you know, it's a very important part of everything. And it's been a learning curve over those years. My passion is the mares and breeding from the lines. I believe we are caretakers of the mare lines over the generations. I mean, all our mares have, as most mares have, obviously history going back over many generations of people. And we kind of look after those generations while they're in our care. And then they go on, you know, once we're no longer doing that. And so I haven't bought any other mares since. I mean, that's my interest is in breeding from those lines. So we've got, you know, great granddaughters from those original mares and, you know, their offspring. And that's what I love, is just seeing those lines, you know, carry on.
And so for you, I'm guessing British breeding is so important, and more we see British bred horses in the news, and that is so important for British dressage. But what might confuse people, I know there's a lot of experts here that won't be confused by it, but there'll be a lot of people watching on social media. And if you've got any questions as well, I am keeping an eye on the Facebook page. If you've got any questions for Judith or Bobby, don't ask me about breeding, please. I will read them out. But how is a Hanoverian? How does that become British bred? So you've got a British bred horse that comes from a Hanoverian mare. That, for me, is like, okay, I don't understand that.
No, that's a very good question. And basically, the definition of where the horse is bred comes really down to where the stud book is that you register the horses with. So you can have a horse that is... The breeder is the person who put the horse in foal, effectively, at the time. So that's the breeder, and the breeder can be British, the horses can be in Britain, but it's actually the stud book that you register them with. So if you register them with a foreign stud book, say the KWPN, then it becomes a Dutch horse.
Okay, right. I've got it. So all of your horses are registered
with the British Hanoverian Horse Society, which is a full daughter society of the Hanoverian Verband. And the good thing of that is we basically have the brand, which is, you know, a big brand of the Hanoverian and what that means in the world. But at the same time, we are British. So you kind of get the best of both worlds. I mean, there are obviously other British stud books as well, like the AES. But yeah, that's fundamentally what, by the World Breeding Federation definition of where your horse is bred.
And looking at British breeding and how it's going, and I just looked at the PSG. You've got so many horses here. I mean, it's obviously going incredibly well. Are you seeing a change in British breeding and the trends, and obviously the success of your own horses?
Yes, when we started, our vision was to not sell foals, but to sell horses under saddle, so that we've, you know, given them the care and the right start in life and the right training so that people can have a horse to ride rather than having a foal and then worrying about that later. And there are a lot more people doing that. You know, different breeders have different goals, so there's no right or wrong. But, you know, there's a lot of good breeders in this country now. You've got Anna Ross and Lorna with elite dressage. You've got Sarah and Alice Oppenheimer, Headmore, who have long-standing breeders of, again, not a big stud, but have produced very high quality. Woodlander, a lot, so, more emphasis on perhaps producing these horses, especially now with Brexit, try and make these horses more available to the British market.
And that was something earlier, Bobby, you were talking to me about the importance as a rider, getting horses over from the continent and actually having horses available here that you can look at and buy, especially with Brexit, like you say, is so important. So I'm guessing the work that Judith is doing is really interesting to you.
It's incredibly interesting because, like I was saying to you earlier, Judith, I don't want to necessarily go abroad to look for a horse, and I think it's fantastic now that British breeding is becoming so successful. And, down to Brexit, it's incredibly expensive to buy a horse abroad now. So we have to start thinking about getting horses in England. And I love personally how you look at it and think, right, actually we want to sell them under saddle. And I think that's brilliant. You've got some fantastic riders with you now, and we can clearly see with the results that Lucinda is having here, what fantastic horses for people to be able to buy that have been started off so incredibly well. So basically, I don't necessarily know. Well, okay, I just enjoy what I ride. I don't necessarily know anything about the breeding side of things. I don't mind who they're by. If they can do the job for me, I'm happy as Larry. So it's people like you that we really rely on. So what do you look for in a stallion or a mare to get these top horses that you have here today?
Well, the most important thing is, firstly, I'd like to say that it's actually the rider's job is to ride the horse. And actually how it's bred, if you have some knowledge, the pedigree will tell you something. But at the end of the day, it's my job to understand the breeding and the pedigrees, to produce the right sorts of horses for riders to ride and enjoy. Why should you care when you sit on a horse? It could be by the best stallion in the world, but if you hate riding it, it's irrelevant. Likewise, using because we sell horses under saddle, it doesn't matter if we're not using the latest fashionable stallions, because it's about, in 5 years' time, 6 years' time, people will either like riding the horse or they won't. They're not going to like the horse just because it's by a certain stallion. And the most important thing, really, in breeding is to start with your mare. People get very excited about stallions, but you have to look at your mare. You have to look at, how does your mare move? Look at the 3 paces. Does she have strengths, weaknesses? Look at the conformation. Does she have a good front? Is she naturally uphill? Does she have a good hind leg? The quality of the limbs. Because otherwise, if you don't look at your mare, if you look at the stallion, you could be finding a stallion that has all the negatives and none of the positives that you're looking to basically build on with your mare. And then once you have that picture, the problem is there are so many stallions now, and it's where do you go? And that is the hard bit for anybody who is starting out with breeding. And so really, most breeders are very happy to talk to people and help people. My view is we can't have enough breeders. I mean, you say about people looking for horses, and actually, if you go to Germany and Holland, you see a lot of horses. Over here, there are less horses because obviously we're still breeding less. The quality generally, the top horses, the very top horses, there's going to be so many. But generally, because the breeders in this country, the quality is quite high, because we don't have the bulk like you get as well.
Yes.
But that's why, we all welcome more people breeding and producing horses, because one, competition is good, but two, when you think how many horses are bred in Holland and Germany, we're nowhere near those numbers. So we're not worrying about other people. We actually want more people, because we need a critical mass of horses in this country. So people will think, let's look for horses in this country. And all I hope is that people will think, let's look here first before we go abroad, because people are looking for particular things. So when we look at stallions, we look, for me, if we're talking paces, most important pace for me is actually the canter, because I want to see a good canter, and I want to see a good hind leg. I'm not particularly swayed by very flashy trots with the front ends. Yes, you need a good trot, but you see what Charlotte can do with horses. You can produce a good trot, but you can improve all the paces apart from the walk, which you can ruin. But, so you want a correct walk as well. I don't want a 10 walk because, yes, that will win you a young horse class, but that gets quite tricky later on. So you're looking for correct paces. I still want a good walk because not such a good walk is expensive. But I'm looking for a horse with a carrying hind leg, not a pushing hind leg. By that I mean a horse that really steps under and actually really sort of lifts the pace. You know what I mean, because you see this all the time as a rider, that you feel the horse is taking. You don't want to see a horses with hind legs out behind them because that's not as effective, and they're going to struggle as you go up the levels. And temperament. For me, temperament is really important. I mean, you can have wonderful, very exciting horses, but you still have to be able to go up the centre line, and people want to enjoy them. People want to live with them. People want nice horses that they can have a good time and reliably go and compete. You don't want something that's a complete idiot. So temperament is very, very important, as well as obviously the movement and a good brain and good trainability, and actually the difficulty with looking at stallions is what you see isn't necessarily what you get. And that's why I like to look. I mean, I do use some young stallions if I think the pedigree is interesting and I like the mechanics of the stallion. And it's fun, it's fun. And then it's like next, when you look the next year, it's like, well, that worked, or well, that didn't work. But mostly I like to use stallions that there is some data for. That you get some information through breeding value data that is published, and seeing offspring up the levels, because you start to see the traits and the qualities that you want. And sometimes some of the stallions, which are the most exciting looking stallions, aren't necessarily the best producing stallions. So it's not easy. None of us get it right. None of us certainly get it right all the time. There's a lot of luck, but all we can do is just hope to, increase the odds of making a better breeding decision, really.
And listening to you talk there, I love how much passion you have about it. It's absolutely amazing. It just draws us all in. And as well, you've literally pretty much gone through the scales of training, haven't you? When you say what you look for in a stallion, and you're looking for the ultimate. So you're thinking, what has to occur in a Grand Prix? What does the horse need to be able to do adjustability? And that's what you're looking at when you're talking about the fact that they could have a 10 walk. We can't do a collective walk, and then how are we supposed to get into a Piaffe? And that's how you're thinking, which is where the future of the sport is going, which is absolutely fantastic. Just going back, though, when you mentioned that it's the most important part, looking at the mare first, I'm not really sure if this is something you can answer, but is it like 50% of the mare and 50% of the stallion turns out into the foal, or is it more 70, 40? How much does the mare actually carry forward into the foal?
Well, as I always say, it takes two to tango. So sometimes you'll get more of the attributes of the mare coming through, sometimes more of the stallion. But that's the point, really, isn't it? That it is two, so that you can't just look at one or the other, because it is the combination of the two. To get the resultant offspring. So it is about looking at both parties and not looking at just stallions in isolation. Because if you've got a mare that's short coupled, you want a more rangier stallion. If you've got a mare that's maybe got a good hind leg but doesn't have so much freedom in the shoulder, then I've got mare lines that have really good hind legs. So there's sometimes I can get away with a stallion that perhaps is not so powerful behind but has other attributes that I want, because I know from breeding from those lines for many years that I'll get that hind leg still. So, you learn, and you learn what your mares produce, and you learn what works and what doesn't work. And you still make mistakes because it's nature, and it's not really a science,
No.
It is addictive. I have to say, I've spoken to a lot of breeders already these few days, and we're all broke, and we all wonder why we do it. But we manage to sell a horse. We keep going for another few months because we're just addicted, and it's very hard because you love that. The excitement of selecting that. You spend ages looking at stallions. You pick the stallion. You hopefully get the stallion, and then you wait best part of a year for the foal, and then it's another wait for them to come through. But it is addictive, and we're all just crazy, I think. But hey-ho.
Well, we need you, so it's all good that you're all that little bit crazy. It's amazing. But I think also what we all forget about, and especially there'll be people watching this live at home, how long the journey actually is. Like you said there, you've got to pick the stallion for starters. The mare's got to be at the right time, to be able to sort that business all out in the first place, and hopefully that all works. And then you sort of, you look at them when they're a foal, and then you ignore them until they're like 3, and then you look at them again, don't you? And then you suddenly put them under saddle, and then you have to wait, and then it's like another 6 years to see if they make a Grand Prix horse. So you have to have so much passion and excitement about it, because it's an incredibly long journey, isn't it?
Yes, and also, it's that the horses evolve as well. As foals are a moment in time, and a foal can be amazing and then not amazing later. And likewise, they can be good foals, but actually when they are older, they turn into amazing moving horses. And a foal is not an end product. That's the thing. A foal is just the beginning.
A little snippet.
One of my vets said to me many years ago, it's genetics will out, and that, we see that all the time, that that how much a horse will change. Even you can see a foal that looks quite light in type, but actually when it's 4, it's a totally different type. And so it's you can only tell so much at that stage. And you can see if it's athletic, if it's built well. But yeah, I love it when they come under saddle, and and they become. I've never had champion foal of anything other than my own regional show, which is not perhaps that difficult. But they go on then to become good moving sports horses. So none of this is easy for people looking to if they're looking to buy foals to produce on. It's not easy to guess what you're going to get.
Absolutely, and I think one of the biggest keys for everyone at home or here that's listening about, okay, I'd like to buy a foal and produce it, whatever, is looking back at the fact that you need a good walk and canter, because you can produce a trot, but there's only so much of a basic canter and a basic walk that you can actually adapt. And what I found really interesting when you said was you like to use a stallion that's been a bit around, because you know exactly how they do. We can look at, a little bit at Totalas's foals. Okay, he's done some amazing ones, but not every single one of them. Well, there isn't another Totalas, is there? I mean, they're coming through when you look at how Edward rides them and things. But I think it's fascinating how you said there that they've got to have a bit of a CV, haven't they, really?
Well, you do. You want to see how they produce. And I also look a lot at the breed value data, which I know that sounds a bit... But that is for sort of the breeding nerds, that the Hanoverian Verband and the Oldenburg, they produce data where because they have mare shows, they have mare tests, they have stallion performance tests, they have foal things, and they analyse the attributes of the offspring. And this goes into all these databases. And then breeding nerds like myself can look at these things. And it gives you very information about, and limbs, how good legs. I mean, that's such an important thing. And you see that a little bit being lost these days. Lots of exciting movement, but to the detriment of good fundament, as they say, good legs, to have not too long pasterns and some bone. They don't have to be cart horses, but, it's... the sport is demanding, and you watch the way the horses work up the levels. They need to have good limbs to do the work as well.
No, exactly. They've got to have that really good foundation from the beginning, because, like you said, it takes a lot to get to Grand Prix. So, yeah.
And we are here at the Nationals, and on the list there's a few Hawtins horses. You can see that must give you great pride to see so many Hawtins horses in those start lists.
Yes, I mean, this is probably our best year so far. There are 14 qualified in about 21 classes, from 4-year-olds through to Grand Prix, which is nice because they're through the levels. Not all of them are here. As you know, Hawtins Delicato is in Aachen at the moment.
Yes, yeah, doing well with Fiona.
Yeah, so, and obviously, some have other homes, but it's nice to see the horses out with their new owners and riders, and, it's good to see them, doing well.
And obviously in this sport, growing up as a child, we got horses and we followed them. And like Vallegro, he was in the sport for so long, it was so nice. So having a name like Hawtins associated with a horse and knowing it's British, even if you don't know the most about dressage, like having a name like that you can follow is so important. And they'll be like, oh no, I know that horse. And if there's a name with that, I know that's a British horse. And that's so lovely to see on a start list, isn't it? And do you feel that? Do you feel people come up to you and they're starting to get to know your stud and get to know the name?
It is actually really nice. It's quite surprising. I mean, as you know, it's a bit of arm wrestling to get me to do this because I'm the sort of person that likes let my horses do the talking.
Yeah.
But actually, it's really nice because people do come and say, and actually all the people who buy our horses are all lovely people, and they want to be sort of stay part of the family. So, you know, we all sort of still like support each other, and, you know, which is really nice that people want to do that.
And you're getting popular because in the Spectator app, I know Hawtins Duchessa actually was like leading on the Spectator app. So obviously people are loving that horse right now. But I'm guessing you're quite a fan of the Spectator app right now. Well,
it was quite amusing, isn't it? You have no disrespect to spectators because they're a very knowledgeable crowd. And so I'm very appreciative of their views. And what I say, one day we can just aspire to perhaps that being the real leaderboard.
I know. And tell us a little bit about the horses that people can see here, and anyone coming down to the Nationals over the weekend. What horses have you got here that we can look out for?
Well, we've had three of our horses directly from the stud in both the PSG and in Into One, and they've qualified through to the music as well. There actually were, I think, 5 horses altogether in the PSG and Into One from the stud. There are horses, we've got horses in the medium on tomorrow, Saturday.
A lot to keep track of.
Yeah, there's a lot to keep track of because there's also all the horses that other people have that we like to go watch and go and support as well, you know, so that's nice to do too. And
you've got the wonderful Lucinda riding many of your horses for you, and that seems to be a great partnership at the moment.
It's fantastic because, as we were saying earlier, you know, it's so you can breed wonderful horses, but you still need them to be well ridden. And also, I must say a particular mention to Serena Pincus as well, because you can have good horses, good riders, but without the good training, you know, it is that and the management. It is that combination. You know, one on its own isn't enough. And Serena has been, you know, absolutely brilliant for us, and her training is fantastic. It's very much the whole scales of training all the way through. And her and Serena and Hayes work very closely together, and Lucinda really wants to do well and learn, and it's just fantastic to see the journey she's on. And I love supporting the young riders to do that. And with the 4 of us all work together really well, and we just have fun as well. You know, when we went to Ermelo back in 2019 with the 5-year-old, myself and Lucinda and Serena and the horse all in our little lorry heading off, no luxuries. We just had great fun for a few days, and yeah, really good learning experience. As this weekend, I mean, all these horses that we have in the small tour this weekend, it's their first year at the level, and it's Lucinda's first year at the level, which is quite a testimony to her and to Serena for that achievement too. So we're just enjoying the moment. So.
Enjoying the ride. And I'm sure there's lots of people watching who want to know, come on, have you got any tips? Are there any stallions 2022 that you're looking at? Have you got any tips or hints for us? What stallions should we be looking out for? What have you got your eye on? It's a tough one. You might not want to give any secrets away.
Well, no, not at all, because Chrissy Hood always jokes about looking over my shoulder at the sort of notes when we go on the stallion tours. But it's just, there are... people would be surprised because it's never the sort of the sort of particular names. I do use some of the name stallions. I have to say this year with Brexit and everything else, that I felt that you had to be a little bit careful about where you went to make sure there was a good chance of getting the seamanship, because it's hard enough at the best of times. But That's a good question, really. I don't.
I love the way you look over here.
I know. That's a good.
Come and help me. I have favourite stallions. Okay.
Who would be your favourite? Who do you love?
Has been Bellissimo, and actually 2 of the horses in the small tour this weekend are both by Bellissimo, and actually they're all from the same mother line.
Yeah.
And I know that's also a stallion that Sarah Oppenheimer loves as well. So
competition's on.
We're going back right. But I've used Bellissimo since he was first licensed, and he's 21 this year, or no, I think he's more than that. I lose track. But so I like what he brings. And another stallion which I really like, and I've used quite a lot, is Florist Count. He's a Grand Prix stallion. Again, one of those stallions in his own right, in his performance, perhaps has, he's not won medals, but I love his offspring and what he brings. And so he's a stallion that I really like. 2 young stallions I've used this year. One is Varbene, which is a Vitalis Bellissimo.
Bellissimo creeping in there again, somewhere along the line,
in there somewhere. Yeah. But he just seems to be producing quite, really quite supple, powerful horses.
And he's been around for so long now that you can actually get him somewhere in the line, but not necessarily the direct.
And I have used Vitalis as well. I've got 2 Vitalis foals this year, one of which was one of the highest scoring foals, even though we don't do foal shows, but when we had the foal inspection, very high scoring. It's actually a son of Hawtins Stud, who we have here by embryo transfer. We don't do a lot of embryo transfers. It's complicated and very expensive, but we do a little bit. But I have good mares, so that's what I use. I breed my mares. But a Vitalis seems to be becoming a very good producer. He's good type, but good power, good limbs, and I think his offspring are going to be good sports horses. So, yeah, I think definitely one to watch.
And finally, Judith, maybe not because she's produced the best, or is there a mare as well that's close to your heart that you've got a favourite? Maybe she doesn't produce the best foals, but you just love dearly, because I know you're in it for the love of it, and I'm guessing you're very attached to the mares as well.
Yes, well, sadly, we no longer have any of our foundation mares left. Probably our most prolific mare from the point of view of the families coming on was World's Finest by Veltmeyer, who is probably the main link back most of the horses here. And then Brentino, my Brentano mare, who probably she was one of the mares when I bought the mares many years ago. Paul Friday and I and my husband, we went out looking, and we were not very knowledgeable, I have to say. The learning curve has been like this.
Very steep.
Yes, but she came from an old, typical farming family, and I always remember the old man took me into the house. He had his few mares, and he showed me his book of all his photos of his mares going back over all the generations from his father as well. And he was so proud, and that really stayed with me and has really been part of what, the whole thing of keeping the mare lines. And so those 2 mares were particularly special to me, and their daughters go forward, and
Amazing. Well, it's been so fascinating talking to you. I could keep you here all day and you'd be very fed up with us and be like, stop talking to me. But honestly, it's so interesting. And what you're doing for British breeding, honestly, we take our hat off to you, and it's so important. And it's just so lovely when you look down a start list and you see a Hawtins name, and it's just wonderful to know they're British bred, coming from such a lovely person like yourself and from such that collection of mares. It's just wonderful to see. And I look forward to hoping you have much more success in the future and here at the Nationals over the next few days. Thank you very much. Good luck with that Spectator app. Clearly they're on your side. Thank you so much for talking to us, and good luck for the next few days, and good luck for the future with the Hawtins Stud.
Well, thank you very much for inviting me, and thank you for your support. That's kind. Thank you.
Thank you very much.